Welcome to The Double Stop. I'm Brian Sword. Today I've got a chat with guitarist Marc Ferrari. Most of you will know him from Keel, but also his other band Cold Sweat, which have a new release. So let's jump right into it. This is my conversation with Marc Ferrari.
I am from Western New York, small town in between Buffalo and Rochester. Both of my parents did play instruments, but they didn't take it any further than college. My mom played saxophone, actually. My dad played a little bass guitar and a little piano, but it was just recreational.
So they did give you the spark to start picking up yourself?
It was my own spark, okay? I picked up the guitar when I was 8 years old at a cousin's house. And I was immediately drawn to it. It just, I was pretty hyper as a kid, and they gave me the guitar at my cousin's house just to shut me up and occupy me so they could have some peace and quiet. And I was immediately drawn to it, and that was the start of it. Yeah.
And how quick until you started playing bands? I
had a school in middle school. I had a band that played at, you just played in music class. I'm playing in front of the kids in the auditorium. I was probably about 11, 12. But when I was 15, I started playing professionally.
Oh, wow.
Meaning, getting paid to play in bands.
Right.
I was 15, yeah.
Sneaking into bars with fake ID or something?
Well, that was when I was probably 17. Back when I grew up, the drinking age was 18 anyway, so 17-year-olds were sneaking in.
And that at 17, those bands you're playing, like, were you, this is what I'm going to do, like that level of serious? Because you said you started professional at 15. Did you know at that point, this is it?
I knew it when I was 14 years old and went to go see Kiss in 1976. My first concert. And I knew from that moment on, that's what I wanted to do with my life. Maybe I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I had a target, and it was, I had laser-like focus after that, But, I knew very early on what I wanted to do.
Now, after you finished that high school age, did you pursue music at Berkeley or anything, or did you jump into bands and get in the van and start touring?
I moved to Boston when I was 18 years old to join a rock band and, wash dishes to support myself. I did not go to college. I didn't have a higher education, although I was my class salutatorian. And I had a scholarship that I could have used in the New York State school system. But I initially put that scholarship on hold, and then it expired. My parents didn't see the logic in that because they were both educators. But they allowed me to pursue my dream, It was my life. And to their credit, they allowed me to pursue my passion.
We're talking mid-'80s guitar player, where guitar players ruled the world back then. Who were your guys that you were looking up to as you came up?
Well, I'm a much different type player than the quote-unquote standard LA metal shredder, because I'm definitely a blues-based guy. I mean, people that I listened to growing up, the big three, Kiss, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Page, Perry, and Fraley, they're all kind of loosey-goosey players, Some would say sloppy. You could say that, but there's certainly a feel there with all those players. And I was also heavily influenced by Pat Travers, Johnny Winter, Robin Trower, Rory Gallagher. You're seeing a theme here. They're blues-based players. Sure, I was also influenced by Van Halen to a certain degree. Michael Schenker was another huge influence on me, who kind of combined that melodicness, that fluidity, and that neoclassical style. So, but I was certainly aware of the LA Shredders, the George Lynch's and the Jake E. Lee's and the Warren DeMartinis, who are now all friends of mine. I was aware of them, but they weren't influences. I didn't even hear these guys' first record till I was 21. By that time I was pretty well set in the path of my playing.
Yeah, and that was a choice then to like, I'm not going to be Mr. Shred. I'm going to stick to more the 70s style.
I don't know if I even had the ability to play at that level. I played at my level, but I think what made Keel, our two guitar team, different is that we had these two contrasting styles that worked. And so I would never put myself in the same league as the guys that we've been talking about. I just do my own thing.
So from Boston, like the first thing I know you from is Keel. So what's the track from Boston to, I assume, LA and Keel?
Well, I was in a band with a couple other guys that had come out to Los Angeles in the summer of '83, and they came back ranting and raving about the weather and the girls and the music scene. And so we decided that we were going to reform this cover band out in Los Angeles and become rock stars. And I joined them a couple months after. They moved out in the fall of '83, and I moved out in January of '84. And about 6 weeks after I moved out, they all decided to move back. They ran out of money and were missing their mommies or whatever it was. But I wasn't going back. Matter of fact, I sold my return ticket. Back then, if you had a round trip ticket, you could actually sell the return portion, which I did because I knew I wasn't going back. And I stuck it out. Got introduced to Ron Keel in February or March of '84, and I was off like a rocket from there.
Now, was that Mike Varney who introduced you?
Mm-hmm.
How like everybody knew him back in the day, but did you know him for real, or did you just kind of know him by reputation because every guitar player knows Mike Varney?
We had been writing each other and calling each other. I never met him face to face. I ran into him at a store on Melrose, and that was shortly after my friends moved back, and that was just a chance meeting, and that's what started it.
Yeah, because he had his column for new young gun players. Were you trying to get in that then, I assume?
Yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah.
He never,
okay, that makes sense.
He never featured me in the column, but he did me a solid introducing me to Ron Keel,
Which was on Shrapnel, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when you joined the band, I know the first record was through Shrapnel. Was that, what stage of development was that record?
What do we mean by that?
Like, did you jump at the beginning and you started writing a record, or was the band kind of on its way?
The band had already done a bunch of shows in Southern California up to that point in time, and Ron had a lot. Most of that album were songs that Ron wrote. I had one song on there called "Born Ready." But yeah, those first songs mostly were Ron's. They were leftover Steeler tracks, maybe, I'm not sure, but
oh, sure,
yeah.
And that's a bit of an anomaly back then for a more traditional rock band to be on Shrapnel, like Steeler was as well. But a lot of it was guitar instrumental stuff. Is that fair?
Shrapnel had a combination of bands and guitar, guitar heroes. And back then, by the way, all the big LA bands had independent releases. Rat, Motley Crue, Dokken, Great White. They all had independent releases before they were signed to a major. So our path was similar. Now
I've talked to a lot of, like, I'm big into the Shrapnel guys, and I've talked to a ton of them, and they all had a similar thing where when they recorded their record, it was like Mike would put them in a good studio, but they'd have like 2 weeks, but it would be a top-notch studio. Was that your experience?
Well, I think that top-notch studio everybody's referring to is called Prairie Sun, which I think is still there. And Mike didn't own it, but he, must have had some kind of sweetheart deal with the folks because he brought in so many bands to record there, and that's where we recorded our first album too. And we may have had 2 weeks; it might have even been less. I can't remember exactly. But we were pretty well rehearsed, when we went in there. So,
and was that your first time in a proper studio?
Yeah, it was.
And that's a sink or swim type situation. How was that for you?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, but we were prepared. I mean, we had rehearsed those songs, over and over ad nauseum, and so it was second nature, muscle memory kind of thing, So we were prepared. And actually, the song "The Right to Rock" came out of that recording because that was a track that I had busted into just to get levels and tones, for the engineer, Ron said, "Hey, play something so we can get a level." I started playing "The Right to Rock," and we recorded it right there and then, and Ron put the lyric to it.
You moved up to a major deal quickly. Was it simply that record did it and you moved on, or were you touring a lot for that first record?
So we recorded "The Right to Rock" in June of 1984, and concurrently we were trying to get a major label deal, and we got the interest of Gene Simmons. Actually, through that demo of "The Right to Rock," that was the song that sold him. But he had a narrow window to do this album, and we went back in the studio 2 months later to do "The Right to Rock." So we actually recorded 2 albums in the span of 3 months. And on "The Right to Rock," we re-recorded 3 songs from that album. We had 3 new songs, and we had 3 of Gene's songs. So we had such a short period to get this thing done. That was really the only way for us to come up with an album's worth of material so quickly.
Now, of course, Kiss being your first concert, that's a pretty full circle moment that very soon after you're working with Gene. How was it working with Gene?
Well, he was great. He's very musical, and he can be a funny guy. He's got this outer shell, and most times he's really serious, but he's got a funny side too. He doesn't show all that often. But he was great. He was very helpful in terms of helping us with arrangement ideas, getting the best performances out of us, being a referee, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Now, I think Steve Riley played on that one, right?
That is correct. Steve actually did the drum parts for us, and then because we had almost 5 months from the time our album was recorded to the time it was going to be released, and we weren't making any money. We couldn't keep him on salary or anything, so he decided to go with the Wasp gig. But yes, he did play drums on that album, and Dwayne had some percussion overdubs, I believe, too.
What was the response, and then what was the touring like for that record? You're finally on a big deal, and that's the touring begins.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, like I said earlier, kind of like a rocket being shot out, I mean, that song came out, and the album came out in January of '85, and we were off and running. Obviously, that song did become kind of a anthem, for the youth movement at the time, and that was around the time the PMRC was rearing their ugly head, and that song definitely was a pushback to it, And we toured pretty heavily that first album. We went out with all sorts of international bands. We went out with Loudness, who are Japanese, obviously. We went out with Accept, who are German. We went out with Helix, Canadian. We had the whole smorgasbord of international rock family on that first year of touring.
So you were what, 23, 24, touring the world?
23. We did not play internationally on that tour. We didn't get over to Europe till the next year. But yeah, I think it was literally, that album came out less than 1 year after I had met Ron. After my friends moved back to LA. I'm back from LA, back east. Literally, don't forget, actually, I met Ron in, because probably March of '84, and by August I'd recorded 2 albums. I mean, things happen so fast.
It's crazy. Wow. Yeah. So you survived that first tour as a young kid, suddenly a rock star out of the blue?
Oh, it's a little, yeah, look, it was fun being a young guy in a rock band back in the 80s. What can I tell you?
Of course.
But we worked hard, and we weren't, our band, we weren't like this serious druggies that some of our compadres were. None of it. We took it very seriously because we knew we may not get another chance at it,
So when you get off tour, I imagine were you writing the next record on tour, or
Yeah,
you were already thinking that way, right?
I had a little portable studio that fit in a suitcase like this, a metal case with a T-Act 4-track and a drum machine and a Rockman. So I was self-contained. I could pull that thing out whenever I wanted, and just start riffing. And a lot of stuff was written that way. Yeah, let's see. We came off tour in late '85, and or the summer of '85, we went right back into the studio because, again, with Gene, it was always, I got to do a movie, I got to do a tour, I got to do this, I got to do that, and here's your window, But yeah, we might have even played a couple of the new songs on that tour, before the album came out. I can't recall. But Ron and I were always writing, and we didn't have the liberty of months in the studio like a Def Leppard or a Boston or whatever, or Aerosmith. We just had to get it done, There's no messing around.
Whose idea was it to cover "Because of the Night," the old Springsteen song?
That would have been Ron's. Yeah, interesting choice.
Mm-hmm.
But it worked.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, on that one, I see that Dave Whitman was your engineer. I've had him on the show. What was it like working with Dave?
Yeah, I remember him just being a great guy. I think he was Eddie Kramer's guy for a while. No, we were thrilled to work with him, a guy of that caliber.
So again, your record's done and back on tour instantly?
Yeah, '86 was the year that we did the world. We went to Europe with Dio. We got to Japan later in the year. We did a couple of cool things. We did the Hands Across America event, I remember. And then that year, we went out with Queensryche. I'm trying to think who else we went out with that year. Queensryche was one of the tours. Crocus was another. We shot the Tears of Fire video on tour with Crocus, another international band.
Yeah, the theme here.
Yes. And I think there was a third tour that year that I'm forgetting now. But '86 was definitely the year we did the most touring.
And again, I assume still writing songs while you're on tour for the next one.
Absolutely. That's the way we had to do it,
So the next one, you're moving on to Michael Wagner. Mm-hmm. Why did you stop working with Kiss, and how did Michael Wagner come into the picture, who's amazing? So,
yeah, well, I wasn't involved with that decision. It may have been that Gene wasn't available, or it may have been also that we just felt it was time to, we've done 2 records with Gene, and let's get a different flavor in there. We all love Michael's work, Accept and Dokken and Ozzy. He was a metal guy,
Totally. Yeah, I've had him on the show too. He's great.
Yeah. And so I don't recall if there were any other producers that were in the mix, but we all loved Michael, so it just kind of made sense to, to do that album with him.
Now, did you feel there was a difference working with Michael versus Gene?
Well, one difference was that Michael was an engineer and a producer. And actually, our album was one of the first albums to be recorded digitally. We were all excited about that back in the day. We were pushing the pushing the limit here. That was one of the first fully digital albums. Some people have different opinion on the sound of digital albums versus analog, but we were rolling with it. And I think that album sounds the biggest of the three of our albums, studio album, major label albums.
I assume that's digital tape at that point?
Well, there's 3 parts of it. There's the recording, the mixing, and the mastering. So if you look on a CD, sometimes it says AAD, which is analog, digital. Sometimes it'll say ADA, analog, digital, analog. Sometimes it's 3Ds, So I'd have to go back and look at our album because, again, you're rolling back the clock 38 years here. But I know it was one of the first albums recorded digitally.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is your last album at the time with Keel. Were there some cracks starting to show, or was it simply business as usual?
The cracks started to show after we came off the road in '87. '87, you know, should have been the year we busted out because we had the frickin' Bon Jovi tour. We did the last leg of the Slippery When Wet tour. We were playing these massive arenas, completely sold out, And we come off that tour, and there was like nothing. We didn't do another full tour after that leg, and I was just like, what the hell's going on? What? And I still don't even have the answer as to why we weren't able to parlay that huge opportunity with Bon Jovi into something else, something more. Did some sporadic headline stuff like here in California. We might have done like a week's worth of headline stuff in like theaters, but we didn't do a full blown tour with anyone else in '87.
That frustration then led you to move on from Keel?
That wasn't the only thing. I mean, we came off that tour, and our label was moving from distribution from MCA over to Atlantic, and there was an A&R guy that was brought in to help us, who Ron clashed with, and said A&R guy is now one of the biggest record execs in the business, Jason Flom.
Oh,
yeah, yeah, and Ron wanted to bring in a keyboard player to soften things up, and I was totally against that. I mean, I had never been in a band my whole life with a keyboardist. I thought we should go the other way, And that, to me, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I was just, him bringing this keyboard player in and the stuff he wanted to do wasn't me. And that's when I decided to leave. It was early '88.
okay. So you leave early '88. You're on your own. What's your next step?
Putting the band together.
Now, is that Cold Sweat?
Well, it becomes Cold Sweat many iterations later and name changes later. But I did a demo pretty early on, like maybe a month or two after leaving Keel, and I found Oni Logan, moved him out from Florida, and I had some friends helping me out on that first demo. Fred Corey played drum, I played bass and guitar. But Cold Sweat goes through it goes through the ringer with personnel changes and Oni leaving the band the day we started recording.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, but we eventually get the record out in June of 1990. That album should have come out a year earlier, but by 1990 we started seeing changes in musical tastes. And I'm fully convinced if we had gotten that album out a year earlier, our trajectory would have been better.
Are the recordings with Oni, do they still exist? Are they around at all?
I mean, they're out there. They're on YouTube.
Oh, are they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're leaked.
And of course, yeah, there's the famous story of Oni, George Lynch showing up to a gig and Oni deciding to split. I've talked to Chris about that. What was your perspective on how that all went down?
Well, yeah, I think that was a gig we played at the Whiskey on the Roxy, and George showed up and he was drunk. And I didn't hear him say this, but apparently he said, "You want to be in a band called Ferrari? You want to drive a Ferrari?" I mean, it's pretty clever to say that, but Oni, I think Oni just, and George, gave him, from what I understand, a decent amount of money as a little signing bonus, which we didn't have. And I think Oni just thought he was kind of hedging his bets that George was a bigger star, and he was, back then. Certainly he was. And it was a shitty thing for Oni to do, but we're all buddies now. Everything's forgiven. We're all friends. I hang out with George. He's been to my house. I actually just saw George here in Agora Hills a couple weeks ago. So we're all good. It's kind of funny looking back at it now. It wasn't funny back then, but it's funny now.
Okay, so Oni's gone, and you're about to record. So how do you get a new singer?
It's by taking ads out in music magazines. It's by going on Z-Rock. It's enlisting people at MTV to look out for us. I can tell you we got hundreds of submissions. And it was looking pretty grim there for a while because we found guys that sang well but didn't look good. We found guys that looked good but didn't sing well. And finally we found our guy in Roy.
How quickly did you get him? And then how did the recording go as soon as you did have him? Did you have to rewrite all the lyrics? And how did that all go down?
It took us about a year to find him from what I remember. It was 89 because the album came out in June of 90 and we recorded in late 89 into 1990. And most of the songs were written. I wrote the majority of that album. Roy came in and rewrote a few things that Oni had written. And then once we got Roy in, I think the song Long Way Down was a new one. And maybe the ballad Waiting in Vain were written after Roy joined. But the rest of the album was already written. Most of it I had written entirely myself.
And what happens when that record comes out?
I like to say we went aluminum. We didn't go platinum, we went aluminum.
And that's MCA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and MCA at that time, they weren't really terribly good at selling records.
No, not rock bands. They had a lot of bands on the label at that time. There were probably 6 or 7 other commercial hard rock bands, all kind of fighting for the same attention, And we did a fair amount of touring that year, though. We went out with Dio. We went out with some smaller bands. We did go to Europe, played the Monsters of Rock Festival with Dio. But it was kind of like, at that point in time, it was kind of like those salmon swimming upstream and trying to jump over the barriers, We were definitely swimming against the stream in terms of that genre of music, starting to lose its luster.
Mm-hmm. So when you finished touring for that, is that you folded up right away, or was there work on a second record?
No, well, we lost our record deal. Our guy got fired, our guy, and we went in and did some demos, of 4 of which are on the new recording. Yeah, we were just unable to secure another record deal at that point.
Somewhere around there, that's Wayne's World kicks in. How did that happen?
Wayne's World filmed in the summer of '91. Cold Sweat had already left Cold Sweat. But that came through my relationship with Penelope Spheris, who was the director of Wayne's World 1, and who Keel got to do a video with for Rock and Roll Outlaw.
Gotcha.
So I had maintained a friendship with her, and I remember her asking me, "What are you doing this summer?" I said, "Nothing. What do you got?" She goes, "I need a guitar player for Wayne's World. You want in?" Let me think about this. Yes. Yeah.
And then Wayne's World explodes, and all us rock guys are like, "Wait a second, it's Marc Ferrari."
Yeah. It's a great experience. Wayne's World 2 equally,
Mm-hmm. Now you're in the mid-90s. Guitar rock is dead. So what do you do at that point?
Well, I actually did 3 albums with my band Medicine Wheel in the 90s, but didn't have the same, we didn't sell as many records, but look, I still wanted to stay creative, But the big thing that I did in the 90s was one door closed as far as my playing career goes, another door opened as far as music, creating music for film and TV and video games and that kind of stuff. And that's what I segued into. I started a music publishing company that did very well. And I wound up having songs in literally thousands of TV shows and films and commercials and video games and even other people's videos. So I know this sounds really bizarre. Why would a major label recording artist license a piece of somebody else's music for their own video? Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Toby Keith is the big one. The Toby Keith video for I Love This Bar, which is one of his big hits. That video opens with him walking into a bar with a piece of music already playing, which happened to be mine.
Nice.
Yeah. Same thing with Red Hot Chili Peppers, Guerrilla Radio. There's a opening sequence, a dream sequence where there's a piece of music playing. So, I've had music, my own music in two of huge major label recording artist videos.
Now that transition, which is obviously very logical, was that through connections you'd made in your past, or did you make that decision and then start banging on doors and start all over again doing it?
Getting on the phone and staying on the phone, or taking meetings, or going to conferences, and it was breaking down doors. I didn't wait for the phone to ring. I made it ring,
So you're having that success, like at least you're having a proper career still within music, but then Keel kind of reforms, at least for a record. How did that all come together?
So that was 1998, I believe, and that was the 10-year anniversary of me leaving. And, it's, time, they say time heals all wounds. And maybe that was the case there. We had some demos left over, including, Proud to Be Loud, which Pantera covered, but we finally released the Keel version of that on the album. And, it was just about having something else to give to the fans and getting the unreleased stuff out there. But we didn't actually do any dates on that release.
Along the way, you seem to somewhat transition to a music supervisor as your main gig. Is that fair to say?
No. I'm currently supervising films, but that didn't come till a little bit later.
Okay.
I would say that producing music for film and TV was my main gig.
Okay, for quite a while then.
Yeah. These days, I am supervising films for one production company in particular that does about 10 films a year. Some of them are these cheesy holiday films that come out every year.
Sure.
And some of these are these cheesy dramas that come out the rest of the year. But
whatever.
It's still fun. It's another experience for me, and I like doing it.
So, as a music supervisor, does that mean you're finding the music and presenting it to the director for them to choose?
Sometimes, or they'll say, we want a piece of music here, and if we don't own it, you create it.
Oh, okay.
That's how that works.
Right.
Sometimes I do actually spot the films and will identify places where background music can go.
Okay. Now, then what's seemingly a proper Keel reunion in 2010 for Frontiers, the Streets of Rock and Roll. Mm-hmm. How did that come together? What made you guys decide to put it back together?
That was our 25-year anniversary in 2009. That was the impetus for that. That's a big number, quarter of a century. And that was the first proper album that I recorded with Keel since 1986 actually, because the Keel album was recorded mostly in late 86. It came out in 87. So, but that was a real record where we went in the studio and recorded, and I miss doing that, most guys will tell you they miss that part. So, and we had an opportunity there to get it out on Frontiers, and they brought us over to play their festival, and we started in 2009. We actually started playing out again. We did Rocklahoma and the M3 Festival, and started going on these cruises and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those cruises are something. I've been on a couple of them. They're a lot of fun, but they seem to be great for a lot of 80s rock bands who don't necessarily want to go tour, but to play some shows like in a, for a good crowd, and it's such an event. Do you like doing them? I
do like doing them, but after being on that boat for 5 days, it's like being on the floor of a casino for 5 days. Everything's coming at you, and it's loud. It's, you're trying to have a breakfast, and they're playing Iron Maiden, whatever. But I do enjoy doing them, and Cold Sweat's on the next one, so we're happy about that.
That's great. So Cold Sweat kind of comes back now. So you re-released the first record. Now you've just re-released the demos and some live recordings. What made you want to put Cold Sweat back together?
I'll be honest with you. I was the stick in the mud with Cold Sweat being inactive for so long, because there's a combination of things. I was busy, number one, running a business, starting a family, having Keel on my plate. And honestly, the Cold Sweat thing didn't end very it didn't end very well. And it took a little longer for those wounds to heal. I was the stick in the mud. But finally the ice melted. I said, we ain't getting any younger here. And, Cold Sweat was a band a lot of people liked. And, so we decided to take that next step,
It seems like over the years they became somewhat of a cult band for fans of that genre.
I would agree with you on that. I think on the first pressing we only sold between 50 and 100,000 records. It was not a lot of records. And every once in a while I'll get one of the guys will say, hey, somebody's got on eBay the original CD still in the long box. They want $250 for it. It's nuts. But, Cold Sweat, I think was held in pretty high regard by most folks. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to, put that ball over the goal line, so to speak.
But again, the Monsters of Rock Cruise is a perfect spot for them because it's full of diehard fans that, that's one of those bands that I wouldn't be, you always get some of these bands like that when you talk to people on the cruise, like they came for that band. That's kind of why they're there. It's not necessarily the headliner because you could see Tesla wherever you want. You know what I mean? But to see Cold Sweat is not so easy.
Well, yeah, the cruise is great. And matter of fact, this weekend, Cold Sweat's playing the M3 Festival back east. So that's a huge 2-day festival. And that'll be our first big festival gig.
That's amazing, right? Like you think about what that band's been through, and now you're playing M3.
Yeah, I know. It's
wild.
Stranger things have happened.
Is Chris able to still play with you guys? I know he's having a bit of a health problem. Yeah, he's good?
Yeah, well, he's assuring us he will.
Great, so that's awesome.
We're going to find out.
Okay. So what's next for you then? You've got Cold Sweat doing a few gigs, and you're still deep into making music and music supervising. Is it just straightforward, or is there any other surprises that you're looking forward to?
Well, this is the 40-year anniversary of Keel, and we are going to drop a single here shortly. It's in run,
great.
But there will be a Keel single coming out, and hopefully Keel gets to play some of these big things too. Yeah.
So you're more open to it now of like these two bands you have to get them as many gigs as you can, or are you still dipping your toe in the water?
Any given year, it's only 1 to 2 shows a year, so it's not like it's a lot, I love playing, so, whatever we get, we go. Let's put it that way. Well, we want everybody to know the new Cold Sweat release, Unburied Alive, is out there, and the title is appropriate because the unburied part are the 4 demos that were recorded in 1990-91. And the Alive part, there are 2 recordings from the Monsters of Rock Cruise in 2020 and also from the Monsters of Rock Festival in 1990. There's a rough tape, board tape on that album, on that release. So, but that's available for purchase. You can go to the Cold Sweat Facebook page or RFK Media, which is Ron Keel's company. And of course, it's available on Spotify and wherever you stream music. So.
And that was Marc Ferrari. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Not sure who I'm going to have next week, but I do have a bunch of interview requests out, so I should be back soon. Until next time, I'm Brian Sword. Thanks for listening.